Good morning or good afternoon, everybody, to all attendees joining today's Electric Vehicles Initiative Pilot City Program webinar. Welcome today. We will leave about a minute to let all participants join and get this started in a minute. Thank you. Okay, good morning, good afternoon to everybody. We're very pleased to welcome you today to this Electric Vehicles Initiative Pilot City Program webinar organized in partnership with our Pilot City Program co-secretariat with the IEA at Shanghai International Automotive City. We are very pleased today to have a wide range of panelists that will introduce today their insights on integrated development of EVs and renewable energy. Today, this webinar will be broadcasted both in English and in Chinese. So you all have the possibility normally at the bottom of your screen to pick the interpretation channel that you wish. We also invite all participants to submit their questions in the Q&A section of the webinar, not in the chat, in the Q&A section. This is easier for us then to monitor all the questions, and we'll have a Q&A session in the end. Just as a short introduction to the Electric Vehicles Initiative, this is a Clean Energy Ministerial initiative that was established back in 2010, with today 15 member countries part of the initiative committed to advance electric mobility and electric mobility policies together. And in 2017 was implemented and launched the Pilot City Program of the Electric Vehicles Initiative, which today counts over 40 cities across the world dedicated to the same goals. So again, I am very pleased to welcome you to this webinar today. And with a very packed agenda today, we will get started right away with our first panelist. So I am very pleased to welcome Mr. Thibaut Abergel from the IEA to introduce some of the IEA work on EV grid integration that was carried out in partnership with other partners outside the IEA, and he will speak today on the opportunity for EV integration with variable renewables. So Thibaut, the floor is yours. You will have 10 minutes for all panelists. I will remind you a minute before the end of your time for the interest of time, of course. But for the moment, Thibaut, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Can you see my screen, Marine?
I can see your screen, yes. So
perfect, thanks. So thanks, Marine. It's a pleasure to be here and present some of our thoughts on electric vehicles as an opportunity for the integration of variable renewables. The EVI initiative has made available two main resources in 2020 on this topic. The first of which is the IEA Global EV Outlook 2020, entering the decade of the electric drive, which has a dedicated chapter that studies the nexus between power systems and electric vehicles. And the second resource was made available as part of the Clean Energy Ministerial, an innovative partnership across 4 of their initiatives: the 21st Century Power Partnership, the Electric Vehicle Initiative, the International Smart Grid Action Network, ISGAN, and power system flexibility, which is more policy-oriented to guide policymakers in integrated electric vehicles to power systems smoothly. We studied this topic because we also updated our sustainable development scenario, and we identified it as a key topic to reach net zero emissions. So the sustainable development scenario reaches net zero emissions in 2070. And to do so, the electricity generation mix changes quite rapidly and drastically. In 2070, fossil fuels that dominate the electricity generation mix today are replaced by hydro and nuclear. But the main trend we see is the growth of variable renewables that dominate the electricity generation mix in 2070, and that are most likely distributed energy resources, wind and solar. What is driving this growth is, of course, the electrification of buildings and industry, but also the electrification of transport, as the electricity used by electric vehicles is barely seeable on the graph today in 2019, according to our estimate, and is growing to more than 10,000 terawatt hours of electricity in 2070, where the world is operating at net zero under our scenario. So it means that electric vehicles hold the responsibility to provide flexibility services to be able to be supplied by this share of variable renewables in the electricity generation mix to make this happen, this decarbonization happen. And we will also see that they not only hold the responsibility, but hold the potential to provide these services. To do so, we started to analyze the electric vehicle charging profile. So here you have a snapshot of an unmanaged global average load profile for a weekday. So the weekday load profile has a peak in the evening that is driven mostly by passenger light duty vehicles that represent the bulk of EV charging demand, but also by other types of electric vehicles, such as light commercial vehicles, LCVs, trucks, buses, 2- and 3-wheelers, etc., that all contribute to this peak in the evening if unmanaged. And we also see that without incentives to provide flexibility, the charging pattern is quite low during the daytime. So basically from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. In the evening, meaning that we really have an unbalanced charging pattern across the day. Now, how does this relate with the total EV and the total, cross-sectoral charging, cross-sectoral electricity load profile? This is what we studied, and we realized that in all of the markets we studied, the European Union, the United States, China, India, all of these markets have actually a peak in the evening, so coinciding with the peak of EV charging demand. Which is quite a bad news because it means that it will require additional capacity generation to supply for electric vehicles if we don't manage to mitigate this peak. Common key trends we also see in all of these 4 markets, so here we are showing 2040, for example, is the drop in the net electricity load. So that's the total load minus wind and solar generation during daytime, which is again a bad news if we just see the unmanaged EV load profile because it coincides with the low part of the charging curve. So meaning we have 2 opportunities for mitigating the impact of electric vehicles to the grid. The first one is a smart charging opportunity during the day. So basically to increase the EV load curve during the day to take into account the fact that we have more variable renewables that contribute to this low in the total electricity generation curve. And the second opportunity is to not only do smart charging, so choosing the time of the day during which we charge, but also doing V2G, so vehicle to grid, that is discharging electricity from electric vehicles to the grid, using basically bidirectional flow to be able to lower the peak and even contributes to reduce the peak driven by other end uses, such as buildings, for example, or industry. Regarding the first strategy and opportunity I mentioned, V1G, or basically smart charging, here is what it could give in China, for example, in 2035. I've put the link to this graph if you want to know more. But basically, we can mitigate the peak by avoiding charging during the evening, as we can see on the net load curve with EV smart charging only. And also, because we don't charge during the evening, we have to charge during the day, which contributes basically to make the net load curve much smoother with less variations by applying smart charging strategies. And what it results is in a reduction of the total peak load by 160 gigawatts. So we're talking about 13% of the total original load. So that's just by applying smart charging strategies. Of course, it requires a lot of changes in regulatory framework, infrastructure, etc. But it also means that if we are applying those changes, we will be able to reduce the total load curve by 13% as soon as 2035. Of course, this is the upper boundary, assuming that a lot of the electric vehicles are actually using these strategies. But this is just to tell you an order of magnitude of the potential. And similarly to vehicle to grid, so V2G, this time not only applying smart charging, but also smart discharging strategy, if I may say. Here I'm picturing the peak capacity demand on the left. So the average capacity needs for the 10% of hours of highest electricity generation, corresponding to the right graph, the off-peak capacity needs, the average of the rest of the hours, so for the 90% of them of lowest electricity demand. And what we are trying to do basically is to narrow the gap between the bars on the left and the bars on the right, because the gap is the extra capacity needs we will need just for 10% of the time. So we'll try to narrow this down. And before, we need to subtract, of course, variable renewables that will be supplying electricity to the grids. And we see that variable renewable generation only contributes to increase the gap because basically solar PV is producing electricity during daytime and not during the evening peak. But if we are applying smart charging strategies, we realize that we can unlock a potential of 600 gigawatts of flexible capacity in 2030. Of course, that's distributed across the main markets. That's not in one given market. But 600 gigawatts, that represents around half of installed hydropower capacity today that can be unlocked by electric vehicles in a decade if we are really deploying the smart charging and V2G infrastructure and adopting the necessary changes in the regulatory frameworks to be able to unlock this potential. So 600 gigawatts, it's really a big deal. That's why we are providing a series of policy recommendations so that we can make EVs not a burden, but an asset to the integration of variable renewables. The first policy we also want to promote is vehicle electrification as a means, of course, of the decarbonization of transport, because we need to reach the levels attained by the sustainable development scenario in terms of electric vehicle deployment if we want to reach this potential. The second recommendation is the active engagement of stakeholders at many levels. Basically, we're talking about benefits for lower energy expenditures, for example, emissions reductions, integration of variable renewables, investment in infrastructure, and all of these topics that relate to the EV integration, to the EV grid integration, are dealt by different ministries. That's why we need engagement of stakeholders at many levels. Market designs need to be conceived in light of EV users, of course, to fulfill mobility needs, because this is what end users want in the first place, but also grid operations. For example, we are thinking that the EV potential, it represents half of the current hydropower capacity for the V2G, as I mentioned, but the difference is that this potential is distributed across a number of EVs, so we need aggregators, we need local flexibility markets, direct renewable charging, emergency response. So a lot of designs that need to be put in place to be able to tap into the full EV flexibility potential. Infrastructure planning, of course, to have behind the major storage, smart controls, V2G infrastructure need to be rolled out, both publicly and with private chargers. And to finish, perhaps the most important is regulatory changes to promote energy flexibility and grid balancing at the utility and local levels, because basically dynamic signals from the electricity provider are needed to vary the time and power level at which EVs are charging or discharging, to be able to reward EV users for their flexibility. With that, I thank you for your attention, and back to you, Maureen.
Thank you very much, Thibaut, for this presentation, this opening presentation that sets the big picture. I would like now to give the floor to our second panelist of this webinar, who will present on strategic thinking on promoting the commercialization of V2G in China. Our speaker is Li Lili, Chief Strategic Officer and Deputy Director at the New Energy Vehicle Energy Storage Research Institute, Sichuan Energy Internet Research Institute at Tsinghua University. Mr. Li, the floor is yours.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. I think you were muted, so you may start over. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Marie. Thank you for your introduction. And I will speak in Chinese for my presentation. 今天这个介绍呢，主要是
Thank you.
跟大家
My presentation
今天主要跟大家介绍一下我们
will focus on
中国
the
V2G 商用化进
strategic
程的一些
thinking
战略思考。
on promoting the commercialization of V2G in
主要包括
China.
3个部分。第一部
This
分
is
呢
my
是我
agenda.
们对于电动汽车与电网互
The
动模
first
式与
part is our
电的一
thoughts
个分
on
析。
how
第二部分
EV
呢
and grid
是
will
我们
interact
对于
and what are the infrastructure
Sorry.
or precondition we need to satisfy.
I used to change the channel because there are some confusion, I guess. Sorry. Can I change the channel to? Okay. Anyway, I will continue. On the
So at the bottom of your screen, you will have the button for interpretation, and you need to select off so that you are not, so that the interpretation doesn't come in your way above your voice.
OK 是在什么地方那个？
Yeah, I'm explaining to Mr. Li. Good. Okay. Now everything has been settled. Mr. Li apologized for not being that familiar with the interpretation features. Now we can move on. Okay. Mr. Li said, yeah, we can hear very clearly. You may proceed. Yes, you may proceed. You may proceed. Mr. Lee said he cannot hear the sound. I think he is not that familiar with this interpretation features. Please. He is asking everyone, can everyone hear his sound? Actually, we can hear very clearly, actually.
We can hear.
Yeah,
I think Mr. Lee can speak and the interpretation
yeah,
is fine.
yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is my agenda. The first part is, I said, the mode and also the technical, like the promises of E2V, E2G. The third is to update you the trend on some key technologies and policies from home and abroad. And the third part is our suggestions for accelerating the commercialization of V2G in China. We learned from the previous panelist a very good introduction. I'm gonna skip the part which is repeated. So for V2G, the mode 2, relatively speaking, compared to the V1G in controlled charging, I think it has a higher request for the battery cycle life, and also in terms of the power interaction between the grid and the value quantity is much larger at least by 1 order of magnitude. The second part is more about the basic logic for the commercialization of the E2G. I think commercialization or industrialization is one of the key driving force behind the development of the E2G. I think there are 4 key relationships to be covered. The first is the 2000 life cycles of the battery. That's the threshold which will justify the starting of the commercialization. To make it happen, we have to make sure that the grid in the future must support the two-way EV grid interaction. It must be upgraded. Based on that, can we design the trade, the profit-making, profit-sharing mechanism or monetization mechanism, and the platform of trading will also be available. These are the 3 preconditions before we can build a closed loop of V2G, before OEMs are willing to develop their massive modes, the models for massive production targeting V2G. So this is very important, like the milestone or threshold we need to satisfy. You can see the battery lifespan, if you can reach 2000 cycles, we can say before this year, this actually KPI failed to be met. So we just talk V2G in conceptual manner, but we believe in the next 2 to 3 years, such a target of 2000 cycles may be fulfilled. So for the next handle, before we can commercialize the V2G, will be at the grid level or grid side, whether the grid can support the two-way interactions between the automotives and the grid itself. We need to keep our momentum of upgrading infrastructure, which remains a quite big challenge as they promise to realize commercialization. So in our near-term priority will be put on that, the two-way interactions. The second part of my agenda is to update you what is going on from home and abroad. The first is more about the lifespan of the battery technologies. Yeah, that's one of the key premise we need to satisfy thanks to the constraint of the battery lifespan. So in terms of the pilot or demonstration in many regions are still based on the V1G. It's more like a controlled charging. So this is thanks to the technological bottleneck. But we know for Tesla or CATL or BYD, these players, leading players like the battery maker or OEMs are making progress. The onboard battery cycle may reach 3,000 cycles in the next 2 to 3 years. So that can address one of the biggest technical bottlenecks. Okay. Next part of my presentation is that number 1, we believe the V1G or controlled charging will still be an earliest comer. We know already that BMW and California's power companies has already carried out their pilot programs. And also China started only at a community level especially in Northern China, we call it auxiliary service market. The V1G participates in already the peak shaving or peak adjustment campaigns. On the left side, that's the schematic of this smart charging carried out by the Californians, by the OEM like BMW and the local power companies. Yeah, and we can see the price-led signal is in yellow. Yeah, when the price goes up, the peaking charging can have a very quick responsiveness. At the same time, the price, you don't need to like they over incentivize it, as long as there is a certain leapfrog. These kind of activities of responsiveness of charging behavior has already started. Yeah, for the next step, this kind of step response will be relatively weaker afterwards. It's also a very interesting topic. The second part is on the right side. It's in China, in northern China. This is a bus charging station. When it is involved into the so-called auxiliary service market, yeah, the blue curve is the previous the running curve. The green curve is that after participating in the auxiliary service market, which is about the peak shaving. So this is a new curve. The new curve highlights the fact that more time of charging has been shifted towards the nighttime when the need of peak adjustment or peak shaving is very high. Yeah, this kind of participation into this marketplace will also boost the commercial activities of the CV, that's the bus. Yeah, in which we do need a signal, price-led signal. In California, this is a early comer in the field. We can also see that including the local state government has already approved the San Diego Electric Company's residential charging demonstration project with 140 million. We call it special grant program to build each of the charging piles or charging spots. It will be subsidized by around $2,000. Relatively speaking, in China, we lack this kind of subsidy, which can also be a reference in the next step. We know California and also San Diego has offered a very explicit independent metering and also the tariff. This is a dedicated tariff. It offers also the premium based on the dynamic demand, which is equivalent into China's policy on policy response or demand response. I mean, 150 hours is the system top, and also the circuit top 200 hours. So these are the dynamic adders. It plays a very important role, and it will guide very well their charging behaviors. Another topic is more about the progress of V2G. Globally speaking, V2G remains at the stage of technical verification and a small-scale pilot, because we know the life cycle, the circle life of the battery is not enough to justify the business models. And in the near future, will we embrace for some breakthrough? On the left bottom, that is also in California, the V2G pilot project. Yeah, it started quite early. I remembered it started from 2016 to 2017. So this is also the real-time market trading. That's the tracking curve. Yeah, the responsiveness from EV is very quick, especially you can imagine 2 to 3 years ago, they did technical verification. Nowadays, their technical advancements is much better, I think. In China, some enterprises like State Grid kicked off. It's also small-scale pilot. But thanks to the fact that in terms of the discharging of the national grid don't have its corresponding policy in place, this is more about actually the arbitrage, the monetization from this energy storage at the user's end. So China is doing the pilot, but the scale and the breadth is still lagging behind compared to that of the advanced regions. Okay, so in the future, for commercialization of V2G, we need to take more reference from their policy, some of the experience, best practice from abroad. So I think California state government has a lot of great takeaways for China to learn for the commercialization. So for their government, they started from 2014, the V2G roadmap. It has proposed that by 2020 readiness will be finished. And also after 2014, California government has worked on the standard protocols on the V2G commercialization with rounds of workshops. So our current judgment is that in the next 2 to 3 years, maybe California will further improve their policy, make the breakthrough. On the left side, and this is California's in 2018, the new edition of the roadmap. But thanks to a big disagreement from stakeholders, the program was displayed, but discussion itself is very of value. On the right side, that is also from their government. They have sorted out the technical, the standards of V2G that covered different technologicals to support.
Okay, so I believe that it is not the right time to provide a specific suggestion, and they will have the different pilots to see which strategy or which solution is the best. But for the standard, now we don't think it is quite problematic. And the IEC information is also very important. So for the IEC, in recent years, they have got increasing attention on the V2G, like the smart energy and the other related works and research, especially on the smart grid. They have launched the related research on the TC263 as a leading standardization organization. The TC69, 57, TC8, and TC13 also have carried out different studies on the standards related to the smart charging and the V2G. So we believe that the international organizations like IEC are also very important for the development of the V2G. So for China's V2G development. So first, we need to look at the residential communities and to help with the infrastructure penetration improvement. As mentioned by the IEA, if we want to realize the potential, the residential community will be very important. So we first need to have the retrofitting of the electric system. The government will have a national action plan, and then to specialize it into the local responsibility, and then provide the policy design and also the financial support. There are some activities like the Broadband China and for the optical fiber connecting every residential community, and also the 5G network building, switching from coal to electricity, as well as the meter reading in Hainan. So all these has represent the development and the action plan of the country. The V2G compared with the 5G, we can have a look at the similarities of them. So for the V2G, we will need the two-way digital power grid. So it is quite similar to the 5G mobile fundamental network. And second, it will need the V2G models and charging piles. It's quite like the 5G terminals. And for the trading mechanism of electricity, it is also in the similar situation compared with the 5G mobile communication. So what we can do in China, so first is learn from the leading 5G experiences, and also the active participation of the commercialization and the action plan in 2020. And it has included 3 phases for the validation and the testing and the standardized work, and then to have the coordinated support from the industry. So we will need to look at the following 4 actions that we have to take. First is a network coverage, and second is an international organization like the cooperation to synchronize with the IEC and the ISO, and the next national promotion of B2G 2025, and the next is the commercialization roadmap, like the standardization, improve the guarantee mechanism, and promote the collaboration of the industrial chain. Okay, this is my presentation. Thank you very much.
I will now turn to Mrs. Liu Huiping, who is the director of the Green Transportation Special Committee of Shanghai Institute of Traffic Engineering. Welcome, Mrs. Liu. You will present now on sharing of integrated adoption of new energy vehicles in Shanghai. So yes, thank you for sharing your screen. Please turn your interpretation channel off, and the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
关掉一下是吧？那个投影投一下啊。对，不是你这个现在没投，现在是那个对。
So I will use the first screen. Okay. Very glad on behalf of the GEF team in Shanghai to share with you the stories in Shanghai. And I will talk about the Yangtze River Delta's GEF development. So just now I heard a lot from the other two experts, and we have learned a lot in the previous seminars. So today I want to share with you what we have been doing in Shanghai. There are three keywords that I want to share. The first is the green automobile, and second is the green energy, and third is the green level. Okay, please hold on. Okay, this is my content. The first is the visions and goals, and second is the green practice in Yangtze River Delta, and also the future focus and action plan. The first is our vision. And we know that, especially in this year, we have the strong feeling that we need a blue sky, green land, and clean water. And we also need a better quality of life to be provided to people. And so for the EVs, we will need it to be safe and accessible and with a highly efficient and high quality transportation service, no matter what tool we are using and what kind of energy we are using. And actually, what we focus on is our ultimate goal, whether or not we can get the clearer sky and we can get the high quality and efficient, also the comfort mobility service provided to the public. And we also need it to be safe. And with this progress, as mentioned by the other panelists, we hope to know how to improve the green level that we have. Not just the transportation tools, but also we will need. So any questions? Can I continue? Yes, I will continue. Okay, as mentioned by the other panelists, we also will need to look at the connection of with the road, with the infrastructure, and to pay attention to the blocking point, a pain point, and the blind point. And based on the other panelists' presentation, and looking at all these goals, I hope to share with you how we are doing to provide an efficient, clean, and smart Shanghai. Back in 20 years ago, in April of 1999, China started the Clean Energy Vehicles demonstration. Shanghai is one of the demonstration zones. We have gone through 3 stages. From 1999 to 2000, we look at the fuel cleaning and the fuel substitution. From 2001 to 2005, we have the multiple development of electric usage, especially in 2008 and 2010. That is a period of 2006 to 2010. We have the practice in Olympic Games and the Shanghai Expo. The picture at the lower part shows that we have the fuel cell and the supercapacitors and the EVs and the battery swapping. At the demonstration of Shanghai Expo, we have tried all of them. 20 years ago, I have been doing the promotion of the clean energy vehicles. So here we can see the pictures I have taken during this period, like the CNG bus, the LPG, and the electric sanitation truck, etc. In the past 20 years, we have been thinking about how to integrate the adoption of new energy vehicles and renewable energy in China. So today, we look at more energy resources like renewable energy, the wind, solar, biomass, and the natural gas. So in the GF6, starting from 2018, we have carried out a lot of trial. Here we have a lot of group photos, and please pay attention that there are a lot of ladies in these teams. We have over half of our staff are ladies. So I think that since using energy at home is the scope of responsibility of the mothers. So you can see the mothers and the housewives also come out to the mission of bringing a green environment for Shanghai. Okay, this is a joke, but we can see the programs we have carried out in Shanghai. In the middle, that is the map of Shanghai and the surrounding area. And where I am making this presentation is Shanghai International Auto City. That is also the pilot city for the EV. So you can see this is close to the Hongqiao Airport, which is one of our key demonstration zones. And I will show you the case in Hongqiao Airport. And here we also have the Lingang port. You know that Tesla have built their gigafactory in Lingang, and they also have the Electricity University. We also have other cases along the Huangpu River. So we see that all of them pay attention to the energy management, and all the management and allocation are centered in Jiading. And we have a concentrated platform here. I have actually 10 stories, but I don't have enough time to tell you one by one, but I want to briefly cover some of them. And this is the Hongqiao Venture Capital Harbor. You can see on the roof, that is the PV panels. You also can see the PV panels at the parking lot. And here on the right, you can see this is a straight light pole. And this is also a charging pile. And it can also carry out the metering and the transaction functions. And also you can see in the middle, that is a yellow container. This is a optical and electrical PV switching containers, which can manage the energy for the whole residential community. And this is the Shanghai Aerospace New Energy Automobile Smart Energy Project. They have a distributed natural gas-based power station, and now it is combined with the distributed PV station. It also has the micro meteorological stations, the microgrid energy management platform, intelligent energy charging, and you also can see our staff have been driving EVs, and they charge in this area with the charging pile. So this is the industrial park in Lingang, and you can see this is a shuttle bus in the campus, and they use a PV microgrid to charge this bus, and it is autonomous driving one. Also, you can see the PV panels on the roof. We also can see a mobile storage and the charging station facilities. And we also mentioned the Shanghai University of Electric Power. And yesterday, there was a news that Tesla have signed an agreement with the Shanghai University of Electricity to provide training courses to the university.
And we also have some other cases together with new energy vehicle in Chinese NEV. So there are 5 universities located in that university park. So when we started this GEF in 2018 in Beijing, so for these kind of joint programs have kicked off its journey, I will introduce a little bit later about a customized the ride sharing, the eDrive program, also worked with these 5 universities. We call them they can discharge. Why? They have mounted PV panels, they have microgrids, they have other technologies to back them. Compared to the average energy consumption of the campus, it dropped by 25%. So 1 out of 6 kilowatt hour electricity consumption comes from renewable energies. So this is, we call it eDrive. So from China's national iconic event like CIIE. So this is the e-mobility service. It's a customized bus. So this is EV card, very popular in China with penetration of over 60 cities and regions in China. We already started a very good and a successful operation in 39 cities, and we are scaling up and out in China. This is the EV card, the EV rental. So by October this year, this is our NEV data center. We have connected to over 340,000 the new energy vehicles. And in terms of the charging stations, we have reached 330,000 charging piles with 134 operators. So hopefully, if the COVID-19 is over, we will invite you to visit us on site and at Shanghai or near Shanghai. If you are seeking any EVSE, you may search this Chinese Connect charging. So you can scan also the QR code on the right side to download your apps to seek the nearest charging station EVSE. Yeah, and also this is our platform. We call it Shanghai Energy Management Center. So all of these programs will be included. And in Yangtze River Delta, where we have over 4,000 EVSE, have we built the charging piles and also the trial driving of the new energy vehicles. We also suggest the so-called the DNA database of smart energy based on different scenarios, and it should be highly modularized. So now for the next look ahead into the future, what's on our radar? Yeah, number one, we call it a greenness driven and smart public utilities. So it's like you will be the owner of your energy and your utilization of energy will be served very well by us. So we want to call it the 4-3-2-1 as our philosophy. 4E, energy, environment, economy, and easy to use. 3 parties, stakeholders, to have very strong sense of the scenarios, the ownership, and engagement. So out of these 3 aspects, we want to make the energy flow, the value flow, information flow to be synchronized to build our internet of energy. So this is what we have been doing in China to integrate the EV or new energy vehicle into the state grid to build a so-called internet of energy as a mega platform, and all of the scenarios will be covered. So today, what I'm gonna show you is the community or the urban scenarios. We also have some rural areas aligned with our national policy and strategy. So for the grid of different platforms will be put together, aligning with the so-called building of the new infrastructures. So one means integration, to integrate the different networks and a platform. Today, we focus on EV, and the microgrid of EV will be duplicated. The successful fruit will be converted for aviation, for shipping. We are convinced that in the future, we will witness a more 3-dimensional development. A fixed distributed generation will be converted into a more mobile distributed generation. On the right side, it looks like a special purpose vehicle. You can use it for emergency, maybe for anti-COVID-19 emergency, and you may build some temporary setting against some emergent issue. And of course, we are gonna serve the daily necessities. According to Chinese word, you have 7 important tasks. You need to buy the rice, oil, salt, a variety of sauce, vinegar, tea, and vegetables. And then now we are talking about the very integrated service of smart energy. We can even cover these kind of buying groceries, even buying breakfast, you name it. This kind of service of delivery will be covered. Yeah, on the right top part, this is my account on WeChat as a special column, and I have left my email thanks to the time edition. And if you have any good story to share, you may send that to my email. And for my special column, we started December last year. The GEF has built its own dedicated storylines. Next month, we will share with you all the stories and cases in 2020. And last but not least, I would like to build a common vision to create a green home and a shared life. Thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Liu, for this presentation and this experience from the GEF project. Thanks for sharing with everyone. I would like to remind all the audience that you are free to ask any questions you like in the Q&A section of the webinar. Please feel free to ask your questions both in English or in Chinese. Stuart Portvik, Project Manager for Electromobility at the City of Oslo in Norway, who will present on electrification of transport, a key to zero emission cities. So Stuart, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marine, and good morning to all of you, and good evening to our Chinese friends. I am the project manager for electromobility in Oslo. That's make me a pretty busy guy. So I will just start. Well, I think that the key to a zero-emission society is focusing, at least in Norway, on transport. So you can see that the City of Oslo has very high ambition when it comes to cutting down CO2 emissions, 95% in 2030, and that's not far from now. So we have a job to do, and we are pretty busy at the moment. Okay, how can we do this? Well, we know that 60% of all the emissions in Oslo are actually coming from transport. So the only way we can do something about the huge problem of CO2 emission is to do something about the traffic in the city. So in 2008, the city made a 10-point plan to actually reduce CO2 emissions. So you can see it's a lot of EVs in the city. And why go electric? Well, 99% of all the electricity in Norway is actually hydropower. And we are producing more hydropower than we are actually consuming. Even if all the cars in Norway, 3.6 million, not that many, but anyway, would use electricity, we would need something like 5 to 6% of the total hydropower production in a normal year. And normally we have a substantial surplus. It makes sense. Okay, so the city started in 2008. Well, it's not rocket science, but we can see from history that if you make an EV cheap to buy, no purchasing tax, no VAT, cheap to use, free parking, free electricity, free passing in the toll gates in and out of the city and so on, and also convenient, that means charging, easy access to parking, and the use of bus lane. If you have all those three elements in place, things will happen. But of course, you also need the right product to succeed. So there are some examples. As you can see, at the moment, 80% of all new cars sold in Oslo is actually zero-emission cars. It's battery electric cars. In addition, you have some plug-in hybrids. This means that 3 out of 4 new cars sold are now electric. This is not rocket science, as mentioned. Green taxes are actually working. but you have to make it affordable for people to take green choices in their daily life. Down to the left, you can see some examples of the most popular cars at the moment, regardless of driveland. You have the e-tron from Audi, you have the Hyundai Kona, and Tesla, and the ID.3. It's really working, but if you look at the more global scale, you can see that still China has the lead, no doubt about that, but you can see Oslo is pretty high up there, especially compared to the fact that we are only 600,000 inhabitants. So except from Chinese city, Los Angeles has more EVs. The blue ones is pure battery electric ones. Yeah, what have we done? Well, we have up chargers everywhere in the city. So at the moment we have 2,000 curbside chargers spread all over the city, and also we have 300 fast chargers. And of course, when it comes to fast chargers, we are doing joint ventures with the private sector. For the normal charging, we as a city owns all the chargers. But for the quick chargers, it's a joint venture with the private sector after public tenders, and there are some examples in the bottom area. Also, it's extremely important to stress that we want people to charge at home. That's the most cost-efficient and space-efficient way to do it. So more than 40,000 chargers has been subsidized in a private housing association. Down to the right, you can see a typical housing association looking at the charging point for the first time. So we have some nice programs, for instance, a EU program called Green Charge, where we are electrifying a whole housing association where there is too little capacity. So we use renewable. Okay, what is the result? Well, the result is that more than 20% of all cars that exist in Oslo are now battery electric. In most of the country, it's less than 1%. So we have, DNV have made a calculation saying that we have 250 more electric cars than we should have compared to other countries. This has reduced emission in this decades from 2010 up to 2050 with 60 million tons. And of course, we are pushing EVs a little bit like Germany and Japan and California did on solar panels. So it's working also on the global scale. Up to the right is a little bit fun. It's a shipment of Xpeng G3 from China. And it says, Norge, vi er klar, meaning Norway, we are ready for you. Other example is huge stocks of Tesla 3s, and down to the right, ID.3. Okay, sky is the limit or trouble in paradise. Well, EV sales are boosting, so it's hard to deploy charger fast enough. Also, it's limited space in the city, everybody knows that. And local grid capacity, which we are discussing today, is a challenge. Also, red tape and long case processing time is a challenge. And also the fact that more than half of the population are living in multi-family buildings, and they don't necessarily own their own parking spot. Also, we need to speed up everything when it comes to professional use of EVs, like craft and service. So we have a lot of programs for craft and service, larger trucks. Down to the left, you can see the Prime Minister opening a huge consolidation hub for zero-emission transport inside the city. Within next year, most of the traffic inside the city can be zero-emission. So this is extremely important. Also, we're doing things for the taxi. All taxis has to be electrified within 3 years. We are building new green mobility houses. Down to the left, have the governing mayor and our vice mayor opening a huge hub for professional users of EV. Also, you need new technology innovation to succeed. You need to reduce cost base and increase user friendliness. So you have some nice examples. The one to the left is from UK, where you have pop-up chargers not taking too much space, but it's there when you need it. You have robots that can charge your car, and of course we have inductive charging, wireless charging. Also movable battery storage and charging, very nice. And of course, as the first city in, I think, globally, we are putting up taxi ranks for wireless charging. You can see some example to the left. Also testing out battery storage where the grid capacity is limited. We can use them, and we can use them for building and construction sites. Down to the left is new ferries, small autonomous electric ferries that you can order by a mobile. And it's electric, of course. Here are some good examples of important EU program that is combining renewables with the EV. You have a housing association, the Green Charge, where we have a huge housing association where we have enough capacity to 20 cars, but we increase with smart grid solution, battery storage, and solar. We can make sure that all 240 can charge. Down to the down in the picture of our vice mayor opening a huge site for professional users of EVI, where we are trying in a program called C4 City to integrate the transport and the building sector. Very important in the future. But in the future, everything has to be electrified, even their airplanes. So all domestic flights is supposed to be zero emission with electric planes. Down to the left, you can see huge tankers and container ship that is passing over the fjord. They are autonomous and of course electric, 100% zero emission. Down to the right, you have up at the far beyond the polar circle at Svalbard, you have autonomous electric taxis and taxi buses. That is, going up there. So it works even in cold conditions, and it's important and it's exciting. Also up to the left, you have wireless charging of buses, which we are doing together with an American company called Momentum Dynamics and also Jaguar Land Rover. So it's exciting times. So we have to make sure that we are doing smart grid solutions, vehicle to grid, peak shavings, battery storage, and of course a second life for batteries. That's good for everybody. So that's all from me. So I would like to thank you. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Sture. It's always impressive to hear all the activities that Oslo engages into to accelerate the rollout of electric mobility. So you can perhaps stop sharing your screen.
Stop sharing. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. And I will give floor to our next and final speaker of the day, Mr. Per Österström from the city of Gothenburg in Sweden. Welcome, Per. The city of Gothenburg is actually in the process of joining the EVI pilot city program, so we're very happy of that. The cities of Oslo, Shanghai, Beijing have been part of the pilot city program already for a long time, I think since the launch of the program in 2017, but we are always welcoming new members. So Per, I will give you the floor now. You are head of transport and automotive business in the business region of Gothenburg, and you will speak today on the experience from your city on EV deployment and system integration. So thank you very much for joining us, and the floor is yours. And please unmute yourself. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Marina. Thank you very much for the introduction. So it was a great presentation by Sture Putvik previously, and the best thing with Norway is the neighbor of Sweden. So we are very thankful for that. So let me share my screen. So I hope you can see my screen now. So my name is Per Österström, and I work as head of transport and automotive at Business Region Göteborg, and I'm responsible for the overall coordination of the electrification of the transport system in the Gothenburg region. First of all, I would like to fly in on the Sweden and EU level. So European Union has set up the goals to be climate neutral by 2050, and Sweden has set the goals to be climate neutral by, let me see, neutral by 2045. And the Swedish government has put together a commission for electrification. This commission has the purpose to accelerate the electrification of the transport sector, and the commission will contribute to the government of the counseling body to ensure exchange between government and industry, research and society. Let's see, do you see my whole screen, or you see my notes as well? Just for
we can see your presenter mode, Per, so you might want to switch to non-presenter full screen mode.
Let me see. Just to make sure that. Sorry for this.
No worries, no worries. Take your time.
So it's better now?
Yes, it's perfect. Thank you.
Perfect. So where were I? Yes, this commission is supposed to be a counseling body for the Swedish government. And aside to this, the Swedish government has also commissioned an investigation how fast we can phase out fossil fuels vehicles in Sweden. It involves analyzing the conditions for introducing a national ban on sales of new petrol and diesel vehicles, and how these vehicles can run on renewable fuels or electric hybrids, as an example, in such a ban. And basically, they're going to propose a year when we can start the phase out for the different types of vehicles. So what we can see, and I think what many of you see, is that the electrification of the vehicle fleet is facing a larger market introduction in several segments, such as passenger cars, buses, heavy vehicles, ferries, electric work sites, and more. And basically, this affects all the players in the industry, and but also cities need to support this transition, and it's going to be requiring a new system thinking. If we do it right, there will be a lot of benefits from this electrification, such as better air quality and lower climate impacting emissions, reduced noise. And we have been measuring a lot to these noise maps to see how will electrified transport solutions affect a city like Gothenburg. And we will be able to reduce a lot of investments in noise boards, avoid barriers, and rethink urban planning, and free up new economic values by this introduction of electrified vehicle fleets. And we can allow the transports to get much closer to the customers by extension of offering increased accessibility to citizens. So there is a lot of value gained from this introduction. We believe that the future transport solutions, they will differentiate on new values for the customers, such as the left picture shows, going from differentiation from drivers' attributes towards more of customers in seat value, and also an emission-free transport. There will be lots of parts used and belong to the old list of vehicles that will disappear in these new vehicles, and it's a totally new shift of delivery models. New values will be introduced with the EVs, as you can see on the right side, where we're looking into the noise maps. How will the electrified vehicles change the city map of the future, and how can we make urban planning for the future? And the right hand side picture with a bus is a new way to show that we will integrate transportation solutions in a different way in the new city. and providing a transport solution with integrated new values to the citizens. These are all examples of vehicle development in the Gothenburg region. We are an automotive region, and there are a lot of big actors dealing with this huge transition as we speak. It's from cars to waste handling trucks to buses, distribution trucks and heavy duty trucks, but also bicycles and ferries and cars, and as well as what Sture Putvik pointed out, also electrical airplanes development for this transition towards fossil-free flights as well. We have prepared and have done our homework to be in the forefront of this transition towards fossil-free transport system where electrification shows the way. We have secured electricity supply for conversion to an electrified transport system, and looking at new energy storage solutions for power balancing, and as example, to-grid projects, as was discussed earlier. The City of Gothenburg has joined what we have in Sweden, Fossil-Free Sweden Transport Challenge, and we have adopted the goal of having local transports that are fossil-free by the year 2030. The City of Gothenburg gonna have its own vehicle fleet fossil-free by 2023, and that will require us to convert towards about 800 to 1,000 electric vehicles in our own vehicle fleet until then. We constantly review the city purchase transport work and the procurements requirements to steer towards increased focus of and degree of electrification in all areas, from electric work site to purchase transports, also to guarantee green electricity on the fuels. Home charging and to a certain extent workplace charging will be dominant, but we must also create charging infrastructure for our visitors. And the same applies for taxi fleets and new mobility solutions in collaboration with many business actors. We have a strength in Sweden that, and especially in Gothenburg, that we have the two largest companies residing here with EVI, Volvo Cars, with their headquarters here in Gothenburg. And they are quite far ahead in this work, and we're working close with them and many other business actors and to make this transition happening. And we're welcoming new companies to come in and work together with us on this goal. By 2020, we will have by far Sweden's biggest bus fleet, electrical bus fleet deployed in the City of Gothenburg. And for us, 200 buses in the first rollout in December is a huge step, and it's going to be a lot more in the coming years. Our port of Gothenburg is also the Scandinavia's biggest port, and the whole logistic ecosystem around the port is transitioning now towards more of electrified solutions. During several years, we have prepared for this transition. The City of Gothenburg, the industry in the region, and also the universities, the academy, to succeed in the attempt to reach this target of 2030. And we want to be a courageous role model in the transition towards fossil-free transport solution where electrification shows the way. BRG Business Region Göteborg, where I work, has been commissioned to coordinate this total work, and we are deriving a city electrification plan, which basically involves everything from city planning to energy supply, charging infrastructure for resident, visitors and business community, city vehicle fleet and purchase transport work that we can control. Also involving the business development in this. And we are having a governance model for actually making impact on what we decide upon. And this is a communication and dissemination opportunity for us to work together with all the rest of you. And we are basically targeting all transport solutions for people, goods, waste, from micro-mobility to heavy-duty transport and building construction work, both on land, water, and air. And we are looking very much into functional sub-areas also to handle all the issues that can be linked to certain sub-areas and also cross sectors. It can be everything from cars and light-duty trucks to heavy-duty work and machinery. As I said, the purchased goods transports, taxis, city purchased passenger transports, our construction sites that are in the test phase of becoming electrified, but also all the housing and parking lots that are in this transition right now. This year we're going to have about 1,500 public charge points in Gothenburg, which I think puts us in the forefront in Sweden. And a quite high value in number of charge points per electrified vehicle. The public transport, both on the bus and the river, is becoming more and more electrified, and also we are looking into digital support systems, tools to actually achieve a momentum. Our energy supply, and both in terms of capacity and how we use different energy storage solutions, are part of our plan, as well how to electrify the port of Gothenburg and the shipping maritime sector. To the right side, finally, you can see two pictures of how we do it. We do it with data. We're looking at where are the transport work and where are the stops. We are also looking into unique local marketplaces where you can trade energy, different energies solutions, and where that can actually give an impact on the CO2 emissions. So thank you very much for giving me the time to give a presentation about what City of Gothenburg is doing in this area. And I would very much like to come back to say more details when we have our first plan executed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Per, for these insights. So we have time now for about 15 minutes, I would say, for discussion and Q&A with the different panelists that we had today. So we received questions via various channels today, and let me ask the first question to Sture Portvik from City of Oslo. One attendee is asking whether you have feedback on how the EV charging ecosystem in Oslo is being universally managed for all role players without having a single control from one entity or a monopoly that runs the whole network. So can you share any insights on how this works in Oslo, Sture?
Yeah. It's working pretty good, but there are some challenges. We have like 2,000 public chargers at the moment, so everything is connected in a back-end system. And of course, it's possible to connect to that. And also we have a lot of good user-friendliness system that makes sure that people know where they can search for a free spot. Also, they get all the information needed. However, we started very early 2008 as one of the first cities to get with Amsterdam. So the older charging poles are not connected to the back-end system. So they are now phased out, and we are replacing them with the newer chargers. So it's, I wouldn't say it's perfect, but we're getting there. So yeah, everything is connected. But I think in the future, because the city owns all the chargers at the moment, in the future, we will probably open up for private companies to actually sell electricity from our poles. So we are more like a mobile provider. Yeah.
Thank you very much for answering this question. We have another question that I'd like perhaps Thibaut Abergel to take on, but also any other panelist who would like to react to what additional or what different needs to be done to mitigate the impact of EVs at the local level on local distribution networks. Thibaut, if you can elaborate on this, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. I think that's a very good point. In my presentation, I really highlighted the potential for balancing supply and demand at the interconnected grid level, but of course it has also local implications. So the local distribution networks are responsible for around 1/3 of the total grid costs. And of course, EVs may require some upgrades to accommodate the additional charging needs for these vehicles. And I think there are a number of factors to consider. The first one is the number of EVs charging in a given area, because of course the more they are, the higher the demand will be, and this could lead to clustering effects. The second point to consider could be, for example, the charging level, the charging capacity level of each chargers. So for fast charging, of course, this will require a higher power level. And the third thing could be, for example, the existing distribution systems, because depending on the countries where we are, we might be able to accommodate a surplus of electricity demands or electricity power needs in a given area. I'm thinking, for example, about already electrified countries like France or the Nordic countries, where buildings heating is relying a lot on electricity. On the contrary, when the gas network is more present, like in Germany or the Netherlands, the distribution systems might not be able to accommodate an additional charge, such as the one of the EVs. And so the solutions to address this could be to make use of flexibility options. So smart charging is one of them. If we ensure that not everybody is charging at the same time, to avoid having, to address the first one I mentioned about the number of EVs charging at the same time. We can use also stationary storage. So this is more, for example, for high power output charging, to be able to mitigate the amount of power that is needed by one charger. So stationary storage and regulatory changes, such as, for example, demand charges. So basically charging the end user with the maximal, based on the maximal power required in a given period. I think coordinated action also between transmission and distribution operators is essential. If you're interested, I encourage you to look at what Coordinate is doing. So Coordinate is an initiative by the EU Horizon 2020, looking at demonstrating how the cooperation between TSOs and DSOs could be economic. And also in terms of planning, so for example, the construction of charging points, of charging depots, for example, could be made in accordance with local network constraints. So when they are not implemented yet and we have the choice of installing, for example, charging stations, we can choose the one that is the most appropriate depending on the existing network and local constraints. So I think this is an overview of what I think could be done to address these local implications, but if others in the panel can complement these points, I'd be very keen to hear as well.
Thank you, Thibault. Is there anyone who would like to add on this point on disruption of local distribution networks?
I want to add some comments on.
Yes.
Hello. I want to add some comments on these topics. Sorry, I think my internet is not so well connected. Can you hear me?
We can hear you very well, thank you. You can speak either in Chinese or in English, as you wish.
Okay, I was close my video to get better network connection. I think there are some needs for the network operators and also the regulators to think about how to reduce the cost to to rebuild or to make the adjustment to our distribution network, because in next stage the
Hello, I think we lost you. Can you hear us?
Sorry, I think there is some problem with my network. Can you hear me?
Thanks, yeah, we can hear you again, thanks.
I will say it shortly. So I think there may be some regulatory change and standards change for the, adjustment or some some refresh of the distribution network to support more more EVs to interconnected to the distribution network. At this time, I think in next stage, many government will give more subsidies to home charging, but the the cost for the electrification readiness is very high. So we need very innovative solutions to reduce the cost, because the cost will be the entire cost for the whole EV industry. So I think it's needed to take into consideration in the future for from the government and the regulation side. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We actually have another question for you, Mr. Li, coming from the audience relating to your presentation. It's a double question, actually. The first part is, do you have any insights on the impacts of V2G, or vehicle to grid, on battery cycle and calendar life? And how do V2G chargers in China typically work? Do they work with slow charging or fast charging?
Okay, I think for the most part of the market, the largest market share of the EV industry is the the individuals. And the individuals right now is representing the 90% of the car market in China. So for the private cars, the life cycles used for the traveling, I think is just about 500 cycles is enough for its lifetime for the traveling. So when you have the life cycles more than 3,000, means you have 2,500 circles can use it for V2G. So if you have 1 circles for 1 day, that means you can almost have the ability to serve the grid needs for more than 10 years. So I think it's enough for the V2G applications when you have a longer life cycles. And also when you have the V2G commercializing scenarios, it will also encourage the battery manufacturers and the car OEMs to improvement their technology and to improve the life cycles. So I think it's like a very good interaction between the car industry and the power grid industry. So this is my view for the first questions. Sorry, I just kind of forgot the second question. It's about
so the second question was about the speed of charging in this V2G.
I think it should be the slow charge, because we need to coordinate the smart charging with the V2G, because we can't allow all the cars, especially for the individual cars, to charge in the same time. That means in the same time, you can't allow all the cars to discharge to the network in the same time, especially when you want to reduce the cost to change or to enhance the distribution network. Means you need to change the present or the I think the present net distribution net should be changed the less. The cost is less, means the capacity for the for individual rest station areas should stay the same. At the same time, it can fulfill all the needs for the car charging in these areas, even in the 100% of EVs there. So means you have very dedicated control and digitalized methods for the charging and also for discharging. So I think for the slow, and we need a aggregator and I think it's also have the smart discharging schemes for this kind of scenarios. So I think slow charging may be the mainstream. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much for sharing insights. So I will be asking perhaps the last question as we are running out of time. We have a question coming from China, asking if Europe has any battery swapping stations and battery swapping schemes. So perhaps Per and or Stuart, you can let us know whether you have any battery swapping in place in your cities or any project towards that. You are muted, Per. You may unmute yourself. Thank you.
Yes, I know this is a solution that is highly promoted in China, and I've seen it myself at NIO, for example, which is one of those automotive companies that has this battery swapping system commercialized. It is actually a previous Saab engineer that was part of that development in NIO Jiading district in Shanghai. But in Sweden, as far as what I know, there is no one that has a commercialized solution with battery swapping. We are trying out other type of solutions, electrical roads with capacity, these capacitive or inductive charging solutions, or charge poles, or fuel cells. That is basically the areas where we are putting our focus. So from what we know, no battery swapping solution is commercialized in Sweden on the automotive side and the more heavy duty vehicles. It could though be an interesting product, for example, for the building sector, electric work site, where I think there are trials on the automotive side to actually look into how do we make the best solution for electrified work sites. So,
thanks. I don't know if Stuart would like to share some insights as well.
The situation is a little similar to what Per describes. It's an interesting technology, but of course we need OEMs on board, because you need a guarantee, you need all that kind of stuff. I know that NIO has some, the Chinese producer OEM has some nice solutions, and it's been tested both in Denmark and in Israel. But so far, we haven't really gotten into that field yet, at least. But it's interesting.
Thanks, thank you very much. So with this, we will close this Pilot City Program webinar. I would like to thank very warmly again our 5 panelists from today. Thank you very much for sharing your experiences to an international audience. I think we really heard from the biggest leaders in electric mobility from around the world today, from China, Norway, Sweden, and the most advanced cities with both EV deployment and EV grid integration. So thank you very much again. I would like to tell all the attendants today to stay tuned for future Pilot City Program webinars coming up in 2021. Other Pilot City Program activities as well that will continue, not the least with the soon to be launched new EV Cities Casebook and Policy Guide that should be released in early 2021. It will be a new edition, the first one since 2014. So we are very looking forward to that. Please also stay tuned to next IEA webinar on urban infrastructure from the IEA Urban Infrastructure webinar series that will take place on 9 December with the topic of Indonesia and EVs. So thank you very much for following us today again, and have a nice day. Thank you.
出去吧。
Bye bye.
Thank you, Maureen. Bye bye.
Thank you very much. Bye bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
拍个合影，都走了，都走了。